Jai Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Bhagwan Ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Bhagwan Ki, Giriraj Maharaj Ki, Narsingadev Bhagwan Ki, Gauranitai Bhagwan Ki, Gaur Premanandi Ki. So today we will be reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila chapter 10, verses 92 to 104. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So reading from chapter 10, text 92. Prabhu samarpila tandre sarupe rahate, Prabhu samarpila tandre sarupe rahate, Prabhu Gupta seva kaila sarupe rasate, Prabhu Gupta seva kaila sarupe rasate, Prabhu samarpila tandre sarupe rahate, Prabhu samarpila tandre sarupe rahate, Prabhu Gupta seva kaila sarupe rasate, Prabhu Gupta seva kaila sarupe rasate, Prabhu, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Samarpila, handed over, Tandre, him, Sarupera, Swarup Damodar, Hate, to the hand, Prabhura, of the Lord, Gupta Seva, confidential service, Kaila, did, Swarupera, Swarup Damodar, Sate, with. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When Raghunath Das Goswami approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, the Lord entrusted him to the care of Sarup Damodar, his secretary. Thus they both engaged in the confidential service of the Lord. Purport: this confidential service was the personal care of the Lord. Sarup Damodar, acting as his secretary, attended to the Lord's baths, meals, rest and massages, and Raghunath Das Goswami assisted him. In effect, Raghunath Das Goswami acted as the assistant secretary of the Lord. So before I begin to say anything regarding the text and the purpose, we'll be reading from the Caitanya Caritamrita today. I just wanted to offer my most humble obeisances to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and most especially to Raghunath Das Goswami, who we will be speaking about today in particular, and also to Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who has written about him in this book, the Caitanya Caritamrita. So begging for their mercy and hoping to be able to speak pleasingly for the Vaishnavas in the Parampara and the current Vaishnavas. Okay, so Raghunath Das Goswami is this chapter 10. This chapter 10 is titled "The Branches and Sub-Branches of the Chaitanya Tree." So all the main associates and main helpers of Lord Chaitanya are described throughout this chapter. And here at text 91 and 91 onwards, we are being told about Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami, he is one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. We see their picture on the altar there, right on Lord Chaitanya's altar, Gauranitai's altar. So he is one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And his text 91 was covered yesterday, but I'll refer to it a little bit to put things in context today. So he was basically born in a very rich family, and he wasn't attracted by the wealth. He wasn't interested in carrying on the family business. So he actually kept running away from home. And he is the 46th branch of the tree, one of the most dear servants of Lord Chaitanya. He left all his material possessions to surrender to the Lord and live at his lotus feet. So his early life I won't talk about much because it has been covered yesterday, but I just wanted to say that he kept running away from home. Twice he ran away at least, and he went to meet Lord Chaitanya. And then Lord Chaitanya said to him, now is not the time. Go back home, keep your feelings internal and just engage in outward duty. So then he finally went to meet Lord Nityananda. And when he met Lord Nityananda, then Lord Nityananda, he is Adi Guru, as we know. So by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he was able to then, when he ran away for the 3rd time, he was able to then go and live with Lord Chaitanya for many, many years. So this is the point at which we are today, which is text 92, that when Raghunath Das Goswami left home and he ran away from home, the details are really very, very absorbing and interesting. So he was on the road for at least 12 days from his home to Jagannath Puri to meet Lord Chaitanya. And in these 12 days, he only ate 3 days out of those 12 days. And it's described the rest of the time, he didn't feel it necessary because he was sustained by his love and his emotion for Lord Chaitanya. So he approached Lord Chaitanya at Jagannath Puri, where Lord Chaitanya was staying. And when he arrived there, Lord Chaitanya entrusted him to the care of his secretary, Sarup Damodar. And together they engaged in the loving service of the Lord. So what is described that when he arrived there at Jagannath Puri, that he was quite thin and weary from his long travel, which he had come on foot. He had walked for the whole 12 days. And he had taken he'd gone in the opposite direction for one whole day so that he could throw his parents and his guards off his trail. Then he went in the right direction to Jagannath Puri. So when he arrived, he was really tired and really seemed to be very travel weary. So Lord Chaitanya, he arranged for Raghunath Das Goswami's prasadam from Lord Jagannath. And so for a few days he would be getting served big plates of prasadam being brought to him. And then after a few days he said, well, he thought to himself, I haven't come here to be served like this, so opulently like this. Otherwise it is the same as home, because at home, you remember, he came from a very rich family, and there was a lot of opulence at home. So thinking like this, he thought, I haven't come here to be served, I'm here to serve instead. So then he started begging for prasadam at one of the gates of the Jagannath Temple. He would just stand there and get whatever prasadam that would come his way. And then after a while, it's described that Lord Chaitanya, he was asking, where is Raghunath Das Goswami? I can't see him. Where's Raghunath Das? I can't see him. And after a while, he stopped even begging for prasadam. He stopped even being at the gate of the Jagannath temple over there, and he just subsisted on whatever came his way. So right from the beginning, he would eat very little. And one thing to highlight is his mentality, which is that I have come here to serve. I haven't come here to be served. So this is the same mentality we are encouraged to cultivate, to be of service rather than expect service. So the main service of Raghunath Das was assisting in the personal care of Lord Chaitanya. So Sarup Damodar, he was Lord Chaitanya's secretary, and he would attend to Lord Chaitanya's baths, meals, rest and massages, and Raghunath Das Goswami would assist him. Okay, text 93. He rendered confidential service to the Lord for 16 years at Jagannath Puri. And after the disappearance of both the Lord and Sarup Damodar, he left Jagannath Puri and went to Vrindavan. So this is how long Raghunath Das Goswami was with Lord Chaitanya at Jagannath Puri, for 16 whole years. And then Lord Chaitanya left this world, he disappeared from this world. And shortly after, Sarup Damodar, he left this world. So feeling bereft, Raghunath Das decided to leave Jagannath Puri. Text 94. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami intended to go to Vrindavan to see the lotus feet of Rupa and Sanatan, and then give up his life by jumping from Govardhan Hill. Purport: jumping from the top of Govardhan Hill is a system of suicide, especially performed by saintly persons. After the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya and Sarup Damodar, Raghunath Das Goswami keenly felt the separation of these two exalted personalities, and therefore decided to give up his life by jumping from Govardhan Hill in Vrindavan. Before doing so, however, he wanted to see the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. Okay, so Raghunath Das Goswami was serving Lord Chaitanya, and he had left his beautiful wife, his parents, his opulent living home and everything to come and live very, very simply at Jagannath Puri. In fact, one time he was actually so humble that he would not really go and talk to Lord Chaitanya directly himself. He would just depend on Sarup Damodar Goswami, who he had been entrusted to by Lord Chaitanya. So one time though, he went to Lord Chaitanya and asked him, what is there any, he said, I have left everything because I have become so attracted and enchanted by you, and I have come here to serve you. So is there any particular instruction you would like to give me? So Lord Chaitanya gave him an instruction on renunciation. And basically Lord Chaitanya said to him, don't dress too opulently, just dress simply. Don't associate with worldly persons, associate with devotees. And don't eat too opulently, just eat simply. So gave him this this instruction on renunciation, basically. And actually it is described later. So his whole life was serving Sarup Damodar Goswami in his service to Lord Chaitanya and serving Lord Chaitanya. So when they left the world, he just wanted to end his own life too. And this is actually like, we might think, oh my goodness, this is such a wise devotee who is a Goswami considering suicide. So, and it is a fair point to consider, and we must discuss it so that we have a well-rounded understanding of the Shastras and the philosophy. So, the fact is that when the spiritual master leaves the world, and this is described in the Bhagavatam as well, that when the spiritual master leaves the world, the disciple must be ready to follow the spiritual master. So then why don't we all sort of leave our bodies as well when our spiritual masters leave this world? The reason is that, so the understanding is that a disciple needs to also be ready to leave the world when the spiritual master leaves, because he feels that his life is not worthy anymore. However, the only reason a disciple continues to exist is to serve the mission of the spiritual master, is to serve the spiritual master's instructions. So, and in doing that service, there is preaching. So this is the reason a disciple continues to live. However, we can understand that this was the genuine mood of Raghunath Das Goswami, that he wanted to leave the world as well. But before he did that, he wanted to go and meet Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. And in those days, Govardhan Hill was a little taller than what it is now. And he wanted to jump off the top of Govardhan Hill, and this is how a lot of saintly people considered ending their lives. So, text 95. Thus, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami came to Vrindavan, visited Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, and offered them his obeisances. Text 96. These two brothers, however, did not allow him to die. They accepted him as their third brother and kept him in their company. So when he went to meet Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, and then he said, I'm going to Govardhan Hill after this. So these two Goswamis who were the principal, the main two Goswamis of the 6 Goswamis, they could understand why he wanted to go to Govardhan Hill. And they said to him, no, we are not going to let you go. Then Sanatan Goswami said to him, he said, I also considered ending my life at one point when I felt that I had committed an offense against Lord Chaitanya. Sanatan Goswami said to him, and then he said, but Lord Chaitanya stopped me. And this is what Lord Chaitanya said to me, which I'm going to tell you now. So Sanatan Goswami, when he was traveling on foot to go and meet Lord Chaitanya, on the way he developed sores on his body, because while you're traveling, like travel is an austerity. So while he was, and it was much more an austerity in those days than it is now, because there wasn't any planes and cars and things that we take for granted today. So he walked, and along the way he would drink from muddy puddles, and he would just eat whatever came his way. So he got sores on his body. So when he went to Jagannath Puri, he would avoid Lord Chaitanya because he had sores, and he didn't want Lord Chaitanya to come near him or get not that get infected, but he just didn't want Lord Chaitanya to be troubled by seeing him in that way. However, Lord Chaitanya, as soon as he saw Sanatan Goswami, he gave him a really big hug. And Sanatan Goswami said, oh Lord, don't do this, I am such an offender, please don't do this. And he was ready to go, and for that offense he was ready. So he would actually take the long route. He wouldn't walk on the beach directly, on the Puri beach. He would take the long route to avoid Lord Chaitanya. But when Lord Chaitanya, he understood this, and he said to Sanatan Goswami that you are my disciple and your body belongs to me, so you are not allowed to end your life. Sanatan Goswami was thinking of committing suicide by jumping under the wheels of the Jagannath cart. So when Lord Chaitanya said this, and Lord Chaitanya said to him, you are my disciple, your body belongs to me, how can you even consider doing something with my property? So and he said to him that go and do all these other services. So all these other services are the main services the Goswamis were given, which is excavating the holy places, writing spiritual literatures, establishing deity worship, preaching, all these things. So Sanatan Goswami then went to Vrindavan after some time and started doing this. So when Raghunath Das Goswami went and met Rupa and Sanatan, this is what Sanatan Goswami told him, that don't do this because your body belongs to the Lord, belongs to your spiritual master, and do service instead. And they gave him guidance because Lord Chaitanya, he had given Raghunath Das Goswami a Govardhan-lila and a Gunjamala. So, based on this, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami said to him, Lord Chaitanya has given you this. This is an indication that you need to be residing at Govardhan and serving Radharani. So this is also something to highlight here, is that the association of devotees is crucial for us as sadhakas to stay on the right path, to actually develop in our spiritual lives more and more. The association of devotees is really important for this. So, by the association and instruction of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami went and resided on the bank of Radhakund for many, many years, and there are many beautiful, beautiful pastimes of what all happened over there. So, text 97. Because Raghunath Das Goswami was an assistant to Sarup Damodar, he knew much about the external and internal features of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Thus the two brothers, Rupa and Sanatan, always used to hear of this from him. So he had served for 16 years in Jagannath Puri very intimately, with bathing and massaging and meals. So he knew a lot, external and internal facts about Lord Chaitanya, and the two brothers Rupa and Sanatan always used to hear this from him. Text 98. Raghunath Das Goswami gradually gave up all food and drink, but a few drops of buttermilk. Text 99. As a daily duty, he regularly offered 100,000 obeisances to the Lord, chanted at least 100,000 holy names, and offered obeisances to 2,000 Vaishnavas. So, because he became famous and renowned for his humility, he was so humble, Raghunath Das Goswami, so humble. So humble that he wouldn't even talk to Lord Chaitanya directly. He became famous for this, and many devotees used to come and visit him. So he would, as soon as he saw that someone was a devotee residing in the holy dham, he would offer his obeisances to these devotees. And so at least 2,000 Vaishnavas he would offer obeisances to every day. And as a daily duty, he chanted at least 100,000 holy names. So I did a little calculation. So 100,000 holy names, if we take that as one Maha Mantra, the 16-syllable Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, right? 100,000 of them equals 926 rounds. So he used to chant at least 100,000 holy names of the Lord. And he offered 1,000 obeisances to the Lord every day as well. Text 100. Day and night he rendered service within his mind to Radha and Krishna. And for 3 hours a day, he discoursed about the character of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he would internally meditate at night time and during the daytime. Ratri dine, it is said. So day and night he would have manas seva. Manas means within the mind. He would be meditating on the service his eternal service to Radha and Krishna, and how he would be serving them. And for 3 hours every day he would talk about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is a small purport to this verse, which is that we have many things to learn about bhajan or worship of the Lord by following in the footsteps of Raghunath Das Goswami. All the Goswamis engaged in such transcendental activities, as described by Srinivasacharya in his poem about them, Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Paro Prema Mirtam Premam Mritam Ho Nidhi. So Srinivasacharya, he has written the Sat Goswami Astakam, and that's glorification of the 6 Goswamis, and 8 verses glorifying the 6 Goswamis. And so this is the first line of that poem, that I offer my respectful obeisance to all the 6 Goswamis, and these are all the activities they engaged in, all the service that they engaged in. So following in the footsteps of Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, following in the footsteps of these Goswamis, one has to execute devotional service very strictly, specifically by chanting the holy name of the Lord. So regarding chanting, the more we chant, the more purified we become. The more we chant, the more we want to chant, because it is a relationship with the holy names, and it is a relationship with the personal forms of the Lord. The Lord is present in his holy names. So we can see that, the Goswamis spent their whole lives chanting, and Raghunath Das Goswami, he would chant and chant so much. Actually, it is described later. It is described later how many hours he slept and how much he ate and all those things. So the more we chant, the more our purification happens, and the more our materialistic covering and all the impurities get cleansed away, and the more we are directly in the spiritual energy of the Lord. So, following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, we need to be strict in our sadhana, strict in our spiritual practices. And the main things that are emphasized are, firstly, chanting the holy names of the Lord, chanting at least 16 rounds a day as an initiated devotee. And this chanting, if anything is interfering with this main activity, if anything is interfering with this, then that should be given away. That should be given up. Because our main duty is our main duty is to develop this relationship. The main way we have in Kali Yuga of developing our relationship is by chanting. Also, when we take initiation and commit to our spiritual lives, we take a vow. We take a vow to chant 16 rounds every day, at least 16 rounds every day. We don't take a vow to do other things so much. We don't take a vow to, say, for example, do other services like, say, do deity worship every day. We don't take a vow to sweep the temple every day. We don't take a vow to do some gardening every day, but we do take a vow to chant 16 rounds every day. So that should be a priority, basically, 16 rounds. So also, we take a vow during initiation to follow the 4 regulative principles, which, as you know, are no meat, fish or eggs, no alcohol, tea or coffee, no gambling, no illicit sex. So by avoiding these things and by chanting 16 rounds every day and doing this very strictly, we actually progress. We progress. One tiny little personal thing I want to say here is that, one of the regulations is no alcohol, tea or coffee. And I've noticed many devotees partake of coffee. I just think to myself that, all we are given really is these four regulations. We are not given 10 commandments. We are given just 4 regulations to follow. And, do anything else but these 4. This is sacred. Protect this, because this is what's going to take us back to home. And these regulative principles are there to guide us on the right path. So I think that, when we try to erode these 4 principles, it becomes more and more of a problem. So strict following is encouraged. And at the same time, we need to be strict with ourselves. We need not be looking to see what somebody else is doing and criticizing them. We need to be strict on ourselves. Have I done my 16 rounds today? Were they good rounds? Have I followed the 4 principles today? So our mental check on oneself is how we need to be strict with ourselves. So following in the footsteps of these Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami, one has to execute devotional service very strictly, especially by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Text 101. Sri Raghunath Das Goswami took 3 baths daily in Radhakund. As soon as he found a Vaishnava residing in Vrindavan, he would embrace him and give him all respect. Text 102. He engaged himself in devotional service for more than 22.5 hours a day. And for less than 2 hours he slept, although on some days that also was not possible. So all his devotional practices, his sadhana, his bhajan, that took him 22.5 hours a day. And he would sleep for less than 2 hours a day, sometimes even that wasn't possible. And some of the pastimes that happened while he was residing on the bank of Radhakund is that he would be so engrossed in his bhajan, so engrossed in chanting and meditating and offering obeisances and writing, that he neglected his bodily needs. Not that he deliberately neglected it and that it was paining him. No, he just didn't feel it. It just wasn't something that caused him pain or distress. Whereas for ourselves, if we don't sleep 6 or 7 hours a day, or if we don't eat 3 meals a day, we can't even function. But the Goswamis and Raghunath Das Goswami is so renounced. So renounced. Now we are also encouraged not to artificially start doing this at all. We are encouraged not to artificially start starving ourselves and eating only a little bit and sleeping only 2 hours. No, that's not the point. The point is that he was so engrossed in spiritual life that the bodily needs were not there, basically. That's how he could go on day after day and live for a long time. If we don't sleep for a whole month, we'll probably crash and burn. So this is how he spent his time, and it's described that many a time, he would be sitting and, mosquitoes would be biting him, and or he would be in the hot sun and the sun would be shining so brightly he would be sweating, but he was completely unaware of this. And Radharani actually was seen by Sanatana Goswami to come and be covering him with her veil. And then Sanatana Goswami chastised Raghunath Das Goswami and said, listen, you can't be accepting service from Radha and Krishna, you need to build yourself a bhajan kutir, build yourself a little shelter. So he said, yeah, but then it didn't happen. And then after that, he was sitting and chanting on the bank of Radhakund, and a tiger was nearly about to attack him, very nearly about to attack him, and Krishna was there to protect him. So seeing this, then Rupa and Sanatana Goswami told him, you really have to build yourself a bhajan kutir, which he eventually did. So text 103. I am struck with wonder when I hear about the devotional service he executed. I accept Srila Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami as my guides. This is the author of this book, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaking, and he is saying, I am struck with wonder when I hear about all the services, and I accept Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami as my guides. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted Raghunath Das Goswami as his special guide. Therefore, at the end of every chapter, he says, Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yara Asha Caitanya Caritamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. Sometimes it is misunderstood that by using the word Raghunatha, he wanted to offer his respectful obeisances to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. For it is sometimes stated that Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was his initiator spiritual master. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami does not approve of this statement. He does not accept Raghunath Bhatta Goswami as the spiritual master of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So, I'll come back to this, but I just want to cover text 104, which is, I shall later explain very elaborately how all these devotees met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, how the Goswamis met Lord Chaitanya is going to be described later by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj. But going back to text 103, so Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he accepted Raghunath Das Goswami, who we are talking about today in particular. And he accepted Raghunath Das Goswami and Rupa Goswami as his special guides. And therefore, at the end of every chapter of the Caitanya Caritamrita, he would say, Sri Rupa Raghunatha Pade, that by the mercy of Rupa and Raghunath, I am speaking, I am writing this Caitanya Caritamrita, by the mercy of Rupa and Raghunath. So some people misunderstand this and think that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was initiated by Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. So who is Raghunath Bhatta Goswami? He is another of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan were Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, who we are speaking about today, and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, who is not the spiritual master of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami. These are the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, who is the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, he did not accept that, he clarified it for us, that no, it is not Raghunath Bhatta Goswami who is the guru of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj. So, who then is the spiritual master of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj? So, right at the beginning of the Adi-lila, the first chapter is titled The Spiritual Masters, and in that chapter, many, like all the spiritual masters are explained and described, but the Lord Nityananda, he is the initiating, he is the Diksha Guru of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj, and then the Siksha Gurus were, as we heard right now, Raghunath Das Goswami and also Rupa Goswami. So these were the Siksha and Diksha Gurus of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Also, who then was the spiritual master of Raghunath Das Goswami, who is one of the 6 Goswamis, who we have talked about today. So, all the 6 Goswamis, they are accepted to be direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But they also had other Siksha Gurus, and they also had, some of them also had other Diksha Gurus, and it is actually quite, there's a lot of guiding spiritual masters. So for Raghunath Das Goswami, we heard that, firstly, when he was living with his parents, there was a family guru. So the family guru was like the initiating guru for the whole family. His name was Yadunandana, Sri Yadunandana. So he was the family guru, and actually, interestingly, it is by this guru's help that he was able to finally escape from home, because this guru came and Raghunath Das Goswami was guarded, like all the guards were all around his house and he couldn't get out. But this guru came and said, I need you to come and serve my deities because you're my disciple, and my other disciples who were serving have left. So on this pretext, he was able to go out with his family guru and then escape. So he arranged for some other devotees to serve the deities before he went away to Jagannath Puri to meet Lord Chaitanya. So so he had that. But then when he went to Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri, he was directly entrusted to Sarup Damodar Goswami, who was his spiritual master, and then also afterwards taking Siksha from Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, and following, based on their instructions, living his life at Radhakund and serving Govardhan and Radhakund. So this is where I'll stop. Jai Shri Raghunath Das Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Are there any questions or comments or points for discussion? Yes?
I'm not sure if it's working.
Is it? Thanks for your very informative class, Kisori. Were you saying that tonight was when we chanted 100,000 names a day?
Raghunath Das Goswami.
Sorry.
Yes. Chanted 100,000. So it is said he chanted 100,000 holy names a day. What is not said is at least 100,000 holy names. What is not said is, were those 100,000 holy names the full Maha Mantra? Krishna Caitanya Prabhu has something to say.
No, you should question.
So I was wondering because you came up with a figure of 950 rounds, but we chant 16 rounds, which is 25,000 rounds, so 100,000 names would be 64 rounds,
Yeah.
not 900. So I'm wondering how you came up with that figure.
Yeah, so 100,000, right? 100,000 and holy names a day. So you divide that by 108, which is one round, and that gives you 926 rounds. But then in terms of hours, it doesn't add up. So yeah, it's a mystery. At least 100,000 holy names. So what I will ask Krishna Caitanya Prabhu to enlighten us further on this. What I am thinking is that maybe they weren't the full Maha Mantra, but maybe different holy names of the Lord, like Damodar and Madan Mohan, like that. Yes, Prabhu.
This one lack of names is mentioned right through the 60. Like Raghunath Prabhu said, that refers to 64 rounds a day. There's 16 holy names and one Maha.
Right.
That's a quite common term used throughout Caitanya Caritamrita. And through the Haridas Thakur, which is just 300,000 names, which is 192 names. That's always referred to. So it's not 900 something.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't be possible. I mean,
Yes.
it would be possible, but probably impossible. Considering he was also lecturing for 3 hours a day.
Yes, that's right.
He was paying his obeisance 1,000 times to the Lord and 2,000 times to the
To the
vice
base members.
but he could have fitted in 100 rounds.
Yeah.
But anyway, one lakh, and Lord Chaitanya would only take prashadam at the lakh pati's houses, That means the devotees of Brahmins would chant 64 rounds, he would take prashadam at their houses. So that's, anyway, there's plenty of references to that,
Sure.
to that account.
Okay. So that means one Maha Mantra with the 16 syllables was 16 holy names.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So I hope everybody's understood that and it's made sense to everybody.
And another question is, we were talking about the importance, the priority of chanting our rounds and the regulative principles. So just on the regulative principles, like you're a doctor and sometimes you administer like certain drugs, like whether it's morphine or different drugs, and then, in a wartime, the medics, they may give the wounded soldiers morphine for their severe pain. Is there some, can we say there's some concession for someone, a devotee who may be in extreme pain all the time, and they take some form of intoxication to relieve their pain?
Yeah, so sickness is generally an extenuating factor. Sickness and motherhood, generally, early motherhood, those are accepted by our current spiritual masters and the previous spiritual masters as extenuating factors, meaning to say there is concession. So if you're sick and you are not able to chant, then that's a different story altogether. The point is, if you're able to, then do it and make it a priority.
Okay, the second part of the question is, they may not necessarily be taking,
Sure. No, that does not fit into the four principles. I mean, there's accepted ways of doing things and there's unaccepted ways of doing things. So the acceptable ways of doing things are following the four principles, and one of the principles are no alcohol, tea or coffee or other illicit substances. There's Ayurvedic medicine, which as astrology and as most of these Vedic sciences, they have been lost through the ages. So what we are seeing now is like a reflection, like a shadow of what those sciences actually were in previous ages. Like mainstream medicine exists based on modern science and based also on a lot of old principles, which, as we know, Krishna is the source of all knowledge. So generally speaking, it is acceptable. Most of the drugs used in modern medicine have been tried and tested and minimized with the side effects. So there are more acceptable ways generally. The illicit substances, because of their side effects of intoxication and clouding the consciousness, they are not acceptable. And putting aside altogether modern medicine, it's one of the four principles. So this is why it is being told, don't do these things, alcohol, tea or coffee, because this is what's going to impede you. It's going to cloud your consciousness, it's going to impede you in chanting. So don't do those things, it is described. So there's basically acceptable ways of doing the same thing, and that should be taken rather than the unacceptable ways.
I guess maybe some people they find, sort of prescribed medicine doesn't really work with their pain, so they take to some intoxication because they find that relieves their pain more than prescribed medicine.
Yeah, there are different strokes for different folks, but the guidance there would be talk to the initiating spiritual master, talk to senior Vaishnavas, and also try to follow the regulative principles. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna.